Howdy. Hello. Hola. Hi. It's been a minute. This is Lumbradita Talks, and my name is Laura. You can also call me Lala. So it's been a long minute since I've been here, and I'm just going to put it out there. Life got very difficult in the month of July for me. Um, I would say I probably had the worst fibromyalgia flare that I've had in a very long time. And I think I needed to just slow down. While all of this was happening, I was being pulled in different directions to show up and support a family who I was very happy to be there for. So I kind of just knew I can do anything but not everything, and I'm not going to be doing this, and that's okay. I'll come back when I'm ready to come back. And so I'm ready to come back, but this is going to start looking a little different. I think until things start slowing down, I cannot truthfully commit to posting every week. And so at best right now, I'm committing to posting twice a month. So I posted, I believe, earlier in July, and then I'm posting again here now at the end of July. Today's July 27th. I'm hoping to post this today or later in this evening. And then maybe in 2 or 3 weeks, I'll post again. I'm thinking I'll be able to post mid August, and then late August again. I don't know. I haven't figured that out, but I appreciate the grace in me trying to figure this out. I think committing to twice a month is very reasonable. Maybe like every other week might work. I don't know. So I think with the stressors of my job situation and then my housing situation, all of that together compounded when I just started experiencing this fibromyalgia flare. They're not in isolation. And I actually had recorded an episode weeks ago talking about my journey with chronic pain and how I was recently diagnosed with lipedema and what that means for me. But as I was recording it, I could see that one of my symptoms that I have with fibromyalgia is that I lose my words. It takes me a second to form my thoughts, and I'm not one to normally be at a loss for words. And I recorded it and I started editing, and I was like, wow, I don't even recognize myself. I don't look like I'm doing that great. And so I was just, you know what? It's not I think it's best for me to not put that out there. Because I wasn't talking about anything too heavy. I was just talking about my journey to get this fibromyalgia diagnosis in 2020. And then in this year, just at the end of June, I got the lipedema diagnosis this year. And I was just sharing the journey, and sharing my insight for anybody who might benefit learning about it. But again, I wasn't like, I felt like I kept just pausing and thinking, wait, what was I trying to say? And maybe someday down the line I'll post it. I mean, I still have the video saved. Maybe I'll post it. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll just re-record it all together. I don't know yet. So this episode, I'm going to be talking about things that I am embarrassed to admit. Yeah, things that I am embarrassed to admit. 8 things that I'm embarrassed to admit. I am turning 42 tomorrow, actually, on July 28th. I've been saying I'm 42 for several months already. I feel like after a certain point, me saying, "Oh, I'm about to be 42." I don't know. I just was like, I think starting like around March or April, whenever my age has come up, I said, "Oh yeah, I'm about 42," or I'll be turning 42 at the end of July, or I have been just operating under this identity of I'm 42 already. And so I want to share some things that I'm embarrassed to admit at this age. But let's start off with my segment of that resonates. So I've seen different things on TikTok. I think my algorithm on TikTok is interesting. Over the past 3 weeks, I actually wasn't really a lot on social media simply because I was traveling back and forth between El Paso and Las Cruces every day and then coming home to work in the evenings. Long story short, I wasn't on my phone a whole lot for me to be looking at different things on social media. But when I was looking at it, I made it a point to like bookmark a few things, and this is one that definitely resonated. So I'm gonna play it for you. I heard someone say the worst pill you're gonna have to swallow in life is telling somebody that avoids their own feelings to be aware of yours. Damn. I heard someone say the worst pill you're gonna have to swallow in life is telling somebody that avoids their own feelings to be aware of yours. Damn. I heard someone say. So this TikToker, His name is Bobby, and it's OG advice for him. Um, and honestly, what he said definitely resonated. I I have actually. I want to play it one more time.
Say the worst pill you're gonna have to swallow in life is telling somebody that avoids their own feelings to be aware of yours.
So I wouldn't say that's the worst pill I'm gonna have to swallow. I wouldn't say that. But it is a difficult pill to swallow, and it is actually something that resonates with me. It's come up a lot in therapy, actually. Um, I've had to get a lot of clarity and reframe the way that I see myself through this autism diagnosis so I can start letting go of some of the shame that I feel about who I am and why am I this way. One of the things that I struggle with is feeling like I'm too sensitive. I have felt like I have struggled with that my entire life. I will say it proudly, there's nothing about me that is superficial. If somebody's going to come into my life, I require depth. I give depth. There's nothing superficial about me, and it took me a really long time for me to even just to be owning that and admitting that openly. But does every single conversation have to be deep? Does everything have to be so serious all the time? Absolutely not. I like to laugh. I like to have fun. I can be playful. I can be silly. I can be goofy. Whatever you want to call me, that's fine. But there is some depth to me, and I like to talk about deep things. I like to talk about ideas. I like to talk about what we hope for the future. What are we currently building right now? With my friends, the people who are still in my life as friends now, they know that I'm always going to be rooting for them and cheering them on. I'm not going to ever ask them, why are you doing that? I'm going to ask them, why not? Who tells you you can't? And I've told my friends, I've poured into my friends and I've told them things like, nobody can compete with you being you. There's no competition there. And I tell myself the same too, right? Look at how far you've come. I say things like onwards and upwards. I say good things are happening. Like, and I love doing that, because I do it for myself at this point in my life. And so in therapy, I've had to process this feeling of like sadness and shame that I feel when people in my life have made me feel that I'm too emotional, too sensitive, or too deep. And the root of it is struggling with perspective taking. Like, I don't understand why some people don't care more about certain things that are happening in this world. Why certain people don't care about certain things that are happening in their personal lives. Or why certain people don't care more about the way that they're treating me or treating themselves. And why they expect me to not have a response. I don't understand that. And one of the things that we discussed was like, Laura, that's perspective taking. You expect and assume and think that other people think the way that you do or would do things the way that you do, but that's just not life. Um, and not everybody is as deep as you. The people who have come and gone from your life will never find somebody like you. There is nobody like you. That's everybody. Everybody has their unique qualities, but there, for a fact, the people that have met you and who have come and gone from your life, the depth that you have is different than somebody else's. And that requires depth from them too. And some people are just not comfortable with that. And she told me water rises to its own level. Basically, the people who are for you and who can meet you at that level of depth that you have will ride that wave with you, will float in that water with you. Those who can't, they're gonna get out. It's too much for them. And that resonates because there have been some times where I have been so concerned, and I would even say codependent, on paying attention to other people's feelings and how their moods and their feelings would affect mine and how I carried that. And then understanding, wait a second, they're not even concerned with my feelings. They're not even really worried about my feelings. And they've made it very clear to me that they're not with their actions. And so I'm not cynical about it. I'm not bitter about it. But I feel that as time has gone on, I have gotten a lot better at gauging. It's still a work in progress. I have gotten a lot better at gauging whether or not I can actually have a meaningful connection with somebody or whether or not it's time for me to fall back. People who avoid their feelings, it's not my job, it's not my journey, and it's not my burden to help them become aware of their own feelings. It's just not. It's not my job to get somebody to open up their eyes that they're repressing or suppressing things. It's just not my journey. That's not what I'm here for. If somebody comes to me and asks me a question, I always preface it with, "Are you sure you want my answer?" Because there's literally nothing off the table that I won't discuss with anybody. I will talk about anything and everything, but are you sure you want to know my thoughts, my insight? And so that really resonated with me, just understanding that, like, not everybody is going to be concerned about me and my feelings if they're not in tune with theirs. That's, I think there's this quote, and I'm going to pause to look it up because I know that I've heard, fairly certain that I've heard Maya Angelou say this, so I just need a second to pull it up. Okay, so here it is. Maya Angelou said, "I don't trust people who don't love themselves and tell me I love you. There's an African saying which is, be careful when a naked person offers you a shirt." There you go. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with that TikTok. Just this idea of like, you cannot expect somebody to give you what they don't have. I think that's what it comes down to. Somebody cannot give you what they have. And that's okay. Accept that and be okay to move on. This whole waiting around and suffering and enduring and accepting crumbs, that's just not where I'm at in my life anymore. I'm not doing that. So, this next segment help me understand. Help me understand, and I think these things kind of go hand in hand with each other. Help me understand, why do people circle back and expect you to be who you once were? Why is that? Whether it's a former romantic partner, a family member, or a friend. When I say circle back, I'm not saying circle the block like an ex coming back around. I'm not talking about that. You could include them in this category about circling back, but I'm talking about circling back is like, you had a relationship, whether it was a friend, a family member, or romantic interest, a romantic partner, what have you. And for some reason or another, you either had a conflict or you just drifted apart and you stopped communicating. Then they come back, they circle back, and then start talking to you como si nada hubiera pasado, like nothing had ever happened. And they're surprised that you're not the same person that you once were. If anything, you're a very different person. And the BS that you're not going to tolerate, it kind of hits them in the face. So I have encountered that. And I don't know if it was because it was Mercury in retrograde or what it was, but I encountered several people coming back into my life over the month of July. And when I say coming back, meaning increasing communication or attempt to communicate with me, right? And for some reason, they wanted to act like nothing had ever happened. And I was just kind of like, well, I haven't been sitting here holding a grudge. I haven't been sitting here bitter. I've just accepted that you are who you are. And I've just repositioned your place in my life. But why are you coming back thinking that I'm just gonna be cool like that? Like, I'm not. I'm just simply not. Like, we're not on the same frequency. We're just not. I've had some of these people that came back into my life. The way that they've treated me, the way that they have spoken to me, and it's not me sitting here victimizing myself, but truly, I will say that these people have contributed to this internal narrative that I have, that I'm too much and that I ask for too much. These people, which is interesting, that are all around the same time they came back into my life or attempted to. They have made me feel, the way that they have treated me and the things that they have said, they have made me feel like I'm too much and like I want too much. And here's the thing, if you thought I was too much before, and if you thought I wanted too much before, you'd be surprised to find out that I am more now of who I've ever been, and I want more than I ever have. I'm going to say that again. And I'm going to say that with my full chest. If you think I was too much before, and if you think I wanted too much before, you'll be surprised to find out that I am more me now than I ever have been, and I want more than I ever have in my life. And so don't come back around thinking that where you left me is where you're going to find me. Don't underestimate me. Just don't. And don't think that you're going to come around thinking that I'm gonna act like pendeja, like, oh, nothing happened, and just go along with it. When have you ever known me to just go along for the sake of getting along? When have you ever known me to be that person? So why did you think circling back things would be any different? So help me understand, why do people do that? Like, why do people do that? And listen, I wasn't a jerk. I didn't blow up in people's faces. I wasn't nasty. I didn't tell them about themselves, nothing of that sort. But you're not going to get that enthusiasm and that warmth from me that you've gotten before. I'm not going to reciprocate. I'm not going to initiate anything. You message me, I'm going to respond. That's it. But I'm not going to initiate communication anymore. I'm not going to divulge a whole lot about my life. If you tell me that you're going through something difficult, I'm going to tell you I'm wishing you the best. I'm sending you a hug. I'm sending you positive thoughts and a prayer. And I do genuinely mean that. But you can stay over there. You can stay over there. And I can stay over here. It's not lack of forgiveness. It's just, I know. Just like I know that there's certain things about me that I am uncompromising about. I just know certain people are not going to change. And there's just certain things that I can no longer tolerate. And so, because of that, I'm not willing to jump back into anything with anybody. Whether it's a friend, family member, including parent or sibling, or a former romantic partner. I'm just not anymore. So, yeah, help me understand that. Is it that people underestimate us? Does it always just come back to people don't have boundaries? Do people not have self accountability? Do people not have effective communication skills? What is it? Why do people do that? Because this is not the first time this happens. This has happened throughout my life. This has happened throughout my life. Do people just not know how to apologize, or do people not? Are people just not even aware that they need to apologize? I don't know. I don't. I honestly don't know. So if you can help me understand that, because it is very puzzling to me. I think these people that tried to circle back and realize that I was not the one for that, to just like go along to get along. I'm sitting here thinking, they're probably just more confused if anything. But instead of asking me about it, they're just letting things fester. And that's, listen, you do what you gotta do that works for you, but that doesn't work for me. And I can't have a conversation with somebody who's not willing to sit in that discomfort with me. So yeah, help me understand. Why do people circle back thinking that things are just gonna be the way that they were and think that you're not gonna be different? Help me understand that, because I personally, I don't understand. Got ink for my pen. I've been journaling. So I want to jump into 8 things that I am embarrassed to admit, but I'm going to admit openly. As I'm thinking about turning 42, and I feel very lucky that I'm turning 42. I've been continuing therapy throughout this season, and I will say that, like, even though things have gotten difficult in certain aspects, I have not lost hope, and I'm still working on figuring out what happens next. Once I move to my house in Odessa. So I'll start off with the first thing. The first thing that I'm embarrassed to admit is that I feel alone a lot of the time. But I don't want to be around people who make me feel lonely. And so I would rather stay in solitude than be around people who make me feel lonely. It has taken me so long for me to be able to even just say that out loud, that there are periods of time where I feel alone. Like, I feel alone with this, or I feel alone in this. And it's not throwing a pity party for myself, but the fact of the matter is there's just certain things that I'm dealing with alone, on my own. But the alternative of me trying to reach out to people who make me feel more lonely, I would rather just not do that, because then I'm just causing my own suffering. So it's like an internal conflict, right? Who can I go to for what? And what if I can't go to anybody for anything? I don't want to live like that. I don't want to wear this trophy of hyper independence that I've had since I was a kid. I don't want to have that trophy. I don't want that. I want to have community with others where we build something together and where we support each other. But that's just not my current reality right now. And yeah, so I feel alone. Sometimes I will say I feel lonely, but the alternative is me being around people who make me feel lonely by being dismissive or invalidating or being just really negative and projecting their fears, their doubts and insecurities onto me. I just can't have that. I can't have that. Second thing that I'm embarrassed to admit, but I will own up to it, kind of goes on hand with the first one. I am very okay not having a relationship with certain family members and people who used to be very close friends with. I am very okay not having relationships with certain family and certain people who I used to be close friends with. I'm very okay with that. It might be an unpopular stance that I should be working on mending things. I should be working on repairing things. Some people might say, oh, you just need to forgive. Listen, I believe in repairing and rebuilding things when the interest is mutual and the respect is mutual, the acceptance is mutual, and the love is mutual. The capacity is mutual. I can no longer carry the burden of raising people up. I cannot. I have done that so much throughout my life. I'm not doing that anymore. I don't want that for myself. And so it's interesting because in social media over the past several years, this idea of no contact has come up a lot in social media. I didn't even know that was a thing when I was doing that at the age of 17. At the age of 17, I went no contact with a parent. That was not liked. That was not understood. That was not respected. And people wanted to badger me into rebuilding that relationship with this person who I knew was simply not going to change. That this person did not have the best intentions for me. So I did that at the age of 17. And it was so uncomfortable and it was so difficult because I was unsupported in my decision to do that. But I just had this conviction. I just knew it was the right thing for me to do for my well being. Boundaries are about maintaining my well being. I cannot control what other people do. I can only redirect myself, my energy, my time, and my effort. And so at this point in my life, over the past 2.5 years, I have got no contact, unfortunately, with some family members, with some people who I was once very close to. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Do I have any bad feelings for these people? Do I wish anything badly for them? Absolutely not. They're still in my prayers. I still wish for them to be happy, healthy, and at peace. We just don't need to be in each other's lives anymore. Um, it's a very difficult thing to explain to other people. So you just don't talk to them anymore? No. Are you mad at them? No, I'm not mad at them. If anything, I accept who they are. They are who they are. But I will not accept being treated a certain way. And so those two things can exist at the same time. And if we don't bring out the best in each other, it's for the best that if they're not going to make the call, I'm making it for myself. And so I'm very okay with that. And I don't know if I have any interest in mending or repairing those relationships because I don't have any evidence that lead me to believe that the desire to do that is mutual. And yeah, that's it goes back to number one. If you think I was too much and wanted too much, you should see me now. I don't know what to tell you. All right. Third thing that I'm embarrassed to admit, but I will share it openly. I shared when I was what was it? What episode was it? Well, it was in my coming out series. Yeah, it was in my coming out series in June that I experienced my first real serious, worst, most crushing, devastating heartbreak in 2024. And now we're in 2026. I'm embarrassed to admit, or not, depending on the day, that I'm not over it and that I have not moved on. That being said, though, I have moved forward with my life. Yeah. I have gotten, as more time has gone on, I have gotten more comfortable with living with that duality internally. Like, I'm not over it. I have not moved on. Frankly, I'm not even sure that I want to move on or if I ever will. I don't know. But what I do know is that my life is moving forward. I have been asked by friends, so when are you going to start dating again? Do you have any interest in dating again? Are you ready to date again? I've had people ask me, what's your type? And my answer is no, 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 no. I'm not over it. I have not moved on. I'm not ready. I don't know if I ever will be. I don't know if I want to be. I don't ever know if I want to share parts of myself that I shared with this person the way that I did with somebody else. And I don't know if that's the autism. I don't know if that's rejection sensitive dysphoria. I don't know if it's self preservation. I don't know if it's me just going back to my default of being very comfortable as a single person. I don't know what it is, but I do feel embarrassed to admit it, but I'm just putting it out there because I feel like there's other people who might be experiencing the same thing and we don't talk about that enough. A lot of people expect you to move on and to monkey branch from relationship to relationship, and that's just not how my brain works. That's not how my spirit works. But what I do know is that I've moved forward with my life and I have started reimagining my future for myself and have been actively building that future for myself for the past 2 years, this new reality. And yeah, and I'm existing with that reality every day. So, all right. Fourth thing that I'm embarrassed to admit, and I do want to give a trigger warning here, it'll be on the subject of mental health, okay? And disordered eating and self harm. Trigger warning. So, I am embarrassed to admit that sometimes I feel afraid I will never get a handle on my disordered eating and self harming behaviors. When I talk about self harming behaviors, I'm talking specifically about the hair pulling and the skin picking. I do believe that I mentioned at some point that I started pulling my hair out when I was 8 years old. I do want to do an episode talking about that because that is an experience that isn't just unique to me. Um, there's a name for this disorder. It's called trichotillomania. I fear that sometimes I will never get a handle of it, like handle on it, meaning that it won't remit, that it is something that I will always struggle with. Like, full transparency, in my adult life, I have lost over 100 pounds twice, once in my 20s and once in my 30s. And I'm now in my 40s trying to do that again. Not because I hate my body, not because I'm fat phobic, not because I think that my life will be better because I lost the weight. It's nothing of that sort. It's just that I'm struggling with disordered eating, and a natural consequence or result or outcome of having a binge eating disorder is gaining a lot of weight. And if I manage my eating disorder better, naturally, not having that caloric surplus is going to lead to weight loss. I don't have a fixed number on the scale that I want. That's not what it is. It's just I want to get a handle on it. And it has been incredibly difficult for me. It is something that in therapy we've tried. And I think the most recent thing is that we're going to now start having a conversation about harm reduction. A few years ago, I was on a compounded semaglutide shot, and I did notice that it turned off that food noise that they talk about. I just can't afford it. That's what it comes down to. I was on a compounded one, which is not FDA approved, so you're kind of gambling doing that, right? And I already have an issue with my pituitary gland, which I know I'm opening up a lot on this, but I have an issue with my pituitary gland, which is our master gland for all of our hormones in our body. And by me taking a compounded semaglutide, which could potentially affect my thyroid when I already have this issue with my pituitary gland, that's too much of a gamble, you know? And so I would much rather take something that's FDA approved, even though we can argue whether or not it's ethical, um, and that I can actually afford. And right now, I just cannot afford it. I will say that during that time period that I was on that semaglutide, it did help me out a lot with managing my disordered eating. And Once I got off of it, I mean, as expected, the weight came back, and that's just what happens. With the hair pulling and the skin picking, it might come as a surprise to somebody because somebody will say, "Well, Laura, you have your head shaved. How are you possibly pulling your hair?" Listen, please just trust me when I tell you that it is something that I struggle with. If I don't shave my head every week, it's a problem. I'll just say that. Um, and it's not just the hair pulling; it's also the skin picking. That's a big problem. So I am sometimes worried and afraid that I won't get a handle on it because there have been periods of time where it has gone into remission. I know a lot of people think cancer and remission go hand in hand, but when we talk about remission, meaning that it's no longer active, it could be any condition. It could be disordered eating. It could be self harming behaviors. It could be an autoimmune condition, a chronic pain condition. Remission basically means that it's dormant or that it's managed and that it's stabilized. So I have gone through remission before with both of these conditions, with my disordered eating and the trichotillomania, but it's been several years. It's been several years. I've had little pockets of time where it's been like 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then back to square one. So I'm afraid um, of me not being able to get a handle on it. But I think part of me recovering from it and going into remission, I guess, is me being a lot more open about it and me not hiding it. And when I say me being more open about it, is that if somebody in my life with good intentions asks me how I'm doing with it, I always ask them, "Are you sure you want to know?" And then if they say yes, I tell them the truth. I tell them the truth. And then I say, "But this is what I'm doing today. Literally, this is what I'm doing today to work on it." All right. So which number am I on now? One, two, three. I think that was the fourth one. Fifth one. Okay. Fifth thing that I'm embarrassed to admit. I know that I am 42 years old, but there are parts of me that still crumble like a child. Um, yeah. There are certain people, places, and things that happen that will lead to me crumbling like a child. And one of those things is um feeling misjudged, feeling mischaracterized, feeling misperceived, feeling rejected. Um, when I learned about rejection sensitive dysphoria, I was an educator and I saw with my students who were neurodivergent, I understood it. But for some reason, it took me a while to make a connection that the reason why I understood what was happening, what I was seeing, was because was having a similar experience outside of that environment as an adult. Um, yeah, there's certain things that will cause me to crumble, that I will be a puddle of tears, and that make me feel very much like a child. Um, I think through neurofeedback therapy, my emotional baseline is a lot more regulated. So the level of distress that I experience isn't as intense, but I still very much feel it. And I think some people confuse emotional regulation with suppression. I've heard people say something like, "Yeah, I can't be with somebody who doesn't know how to emotionally regulate themselves." I've heard actually somebody say that. Not to me, just in reference to somebody else. And I thought, so when you say that somebody who doesn't know how to emotionally regulate yourself themselves, what do they mean like that? Like, are you saying that you just want them to be like this all the time? Like, to just be neutral at all times? To not have any type of response to anything? Like, what does that mean? They couldn't even tell me. They just basically expressed to me that they're uncomfortable with people having feelings. And I think that's interesting because that's just not very realistic. I think to me, emotional regulation is I can have my feelings that I'm having, but the way that I'm behaving and the way that I'm speaking, I am responsible for that. And how I behave and how I speak with those emotions is where it starts becoming harmful, right? If I don't manage it properly. Like, I can be upset, I can be sad, I can be frustrated, I can even feel angry. Those are my feelings. They're not facts. But how I behave and how I treat other people with those emotions, I am responsible for that. I think that's where some people get confused about what emotional regulation means. You can become dysregulated, but not fly off the handle. You can become like just flooded with emotion and still work your way through that emotion and not cause any harm to yourself or to others through your words or your actions. And for me, when I crumble, like I said, like a child, I just cry a lot. I just cry a lot. I cry like a child. And that's something that like is embarrassing. It feels very vulnerable. And so I make it a point now to one, not be around other people who misperceive me, who misjudge me, who mischaracterize me, and who are very intent on continuing to see me that way. I just make it a point to not do that to myself anymore. I make it a point to not be in contact with people who don't reciprocate. Um, I understand that our capacity and our emotional availability varies through every season, right? In friendships. But if it's a thing repeatedly, time and time again across a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years plus, that's just the norm. And it goes back to what I said that I don't want to be around people who make me feel more lonely. That causes me to feel rejected, and I will continue and continue and continue. And for what? It's a very one-sided thing. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm embarrassed to admit that sometimes I still crumble like a child when I experience feelings of rejection, or when I experience feelings of abandonment, or feelings of being misperceived, misjudged, mischaracterized. I still crumble like a child. And the way that I'm working through it is by having better discernment about who deserves to be in my life. Um, yeah, that's the best way that I would say that I'm handling it. And then also just owning it. I'm a sensitive person. Um, and I have denied myself my feelings for a long time. And I now allow myself to feel my feelings. That doesn't mean I'm gonna fly off the handle. And if you're uncomfortable witnessing me feel emotional, that and then you're not I'm not we shouldn't be in each other's lives. Because if you came at me expressing your emotions and you were crying about something that was understandably upsetting to you, even if I can't relate to it, I would hold space for that. There's literally not much there's really not much I can't hold space for. Like I grew up with a lot of siblings. I've been an educator for 20 years. I've seen a lot. I've held space for a lot of people for different things, and like the thing is like not everybody is willing to do that, and that's okay. But I'm just making it a point to no longer subject myself to that and again continue to cause my own suffering. Right, here's the sixth thing that I'm embarrassed to admit. Being a single dog mom is not easy and can be overwhelming sometimes. So, back in 2010, I took my Sashita, who has now walked over the rainbow. I took my Sashita with me to New Orleans. Um, and she lived with me in New Orleans. She lived with me in Colorado Springs. And she lived with me in Central Texas. She lived with me in New Mexico. She lived with me in El Paso. And then she lived with me in Odessa before walking over the rainbow. And she was so special, um, because we kind of just understood each other, that we needed our space sometimes, but that we enjoyed each other's company, that we enjoyed spending time with each other. But I will say that being her dog mom was easy. There was a period of time where my mental health was not well, and I did ask my family to look after her for me because I knew that I was not doing well, that I had to prioritize my mental health and my living situation at that point, and I didn't want to drag her through any type of instability. And so I did ask my family to help me take care of her for a good year and a half, I think it was. when I lived in Central Texas. And one of my motivators for wanting to get my health back on track, my mental health and my physical health, was because I wanted to be with her again, right? And this was all self-imposed. Um, and eventually I did. She and I, about a year and a half later, I was able to take her back, and up until she walked over that rainbow, like that last house, the house that I bought in Odessa, I had this like urgency to get that house because I had always said I wanted to buy her a house just for her. And the day that I closed on that house and I took her to see that house, and she just ran all over like it was hers. Like she knew this is our casita, like this is our house. And then she walked over the rainbow 8 months later. She walked over the rainbow 8 months later after we moved into that house. And it was crushing. And it was a privilege, honestly. I know that's something like, what do you mean? It was a privilege to have been able to be her dog mom. And then about a month later, the partner that I had at the time, she and I adopted Sushi. And we knew back then that Sushi had some trauma, right? But we were raising her together, and the two of us together were going to figure it out. Sushi um, needed a lot of support, and I needed a lot of patience, a lot of consistency, a lot of care. With her even wanting to go outside to go potty, her wanting to eat her food, her wanting to drink her water. Um, she was in a freeze state is the best way that I can say it. And so while there was some challenges with it, we were doing it together, and things did get a lot better. In 2 years, she was a completely different dog. She was jumping up and down, excited and happy. She would go out in the backyard and roll around. She increasingly became a lot more affectionate, very goofy and silly, doing things like getting one of her plushies and taking it from one room to the next without telling us, just doing it. Her personality really just started to come out. But then when that relationship that I had with this person ended and I kept her, these past 2 years, there have been some periods of time where I have felt overwhelmed. I have felt overwhelmed being a single dog mom because I did not think I was going to be a single parent to this dog. I did not think that. I did not think I was going to be a single parent to Sushi. And that has been difficult for me. Do I resent it? No, because this was a choice. This has always been a choice. I'm glad to do it, but I can also say that I also have experienced feeling overwhelmed. I think there is one instance just even earlier this year that I can think of fresh in my mind when I needed to go to the hospital because I had pulmonary edema and I had nobody to look after her. And I had to take her to get boarded. And I called up when I knew things were bad and my oxygen had dropped down to low 80s. Um, my pulmonologist had already told me that if it drops to below 80, 84, 83, if it drops below that, you need to go to the hospital. You need to go to the ER. It was already there. And I saw that and I was like, what am I going to do? So I ended up calling this place. And of course, I'm leaving a lot of details out about the circumstances around this, but called up the doggy hotel boarding place that I've taken to her before. And they took her in. I explained to them the situation real quick over the phone, and they took her in and they watched her for me for a week. And it was very overwhelming. It was very overwhelming because even just walking her down 3 flights of stairs, by the time I got to the ER, I got asked how come I didn't call an ambulance. I did get asked that. You should have called an ambulance. You're not doing well. You cannot even stand up. Se me hacen agua los ojos. Like my eyes water just thinking about it. I took her. I drove 20 minutes to take her to the doggy boarding, and then I drove 20 minutes to the ER, parked my car, and walked into the ER. I don't know how I did it. Um, But the point of this is that being a single dog mom to a baby dog who has trauma and has support needs can be overwhelming sometimes. And it's not that I can't take care of her or not that I can't take care of myself, because I've actually had a family member tell me that, which is wild. Uh, you have zero evidence to believe that I can't take care of myself. Like, what are you talking about? That's crazy you would say that. Um, but I don't think it's crazy to say that it can be overwhelming sometimes, and I'm embarrassed to admit it, because when I took Sashita, I was like, what, 25, 26. So I've had a dog with me, a baby dog with me since my mid 20s, 30s, and now 40s. Most of my adult life, I've been responsible and have chosen that responsibility of being a dog mom. But in this most recent chapter, it is not the way I would have expected it. I do believe, though, that Sushi ended up in my life for a reason and that I ended up in her life for a reason. Um, and even then, it can still feel overwhelming sometimes. But I'm doing the best that I can. And she is one of my motivators and she is emotional support for me. And I'm very grateful to have her. But like I said, it can be overwhelming sometimes. It can be. All right. Seventh thing that I'm sometimes embarrassed to admit. I feel like some of these all kind of tie together, but it really hurts my feelings when people mischaracterize me. And I don't know if it will ever not hurt. It hurts my feelings when people say that I'm stubborn or that I'm inflexible. Those two words really hurt my feelings. Um, I have internalized it like something is wrong with me for that. And through my autism diagnosis and me reading up a lot about it and processing it through therapy, the grief that comes with that, I've had to start learning how to reframe the way that I view myself and the story that I tell myself about myself. I don't actually think that I'm stubborn or inflexible. I rebuke that. I rebuke that as a criticism. I am willing to hear about myself and I am willing to be held accountable. But to say that I'm stubborn or inflexible as a way to like demean me and mischaracterize me, I don't think is fair and it does hurt my feelings. What I've learned is that I'm uncompromising. I'm uncompromising in who I am, what I stand for, and what I believe I deserve. That's what I am. I'm going to say it again because I wrote this down. I'm uncompromising in who I am, what I stand for, and what I believe I deserve. That's what it is, but it still hurts my feelings when people mischaracterize or misjudge me as somebody who's stubborn or inflexible. There have been very specific times in my childhood, my adolescence, and my adult life where people have thrown that to me as an insult or as a criticism. You know, I have been in a relationship with somebody who told me that they liked how decisive I was and how certain I was and how assertive I was, to then turn around and weaponize and say that I'm stubborn and I'm inflexible. And they withheld that thought or those feelings of contempt that they had towards me around that until the end. I've been in relationships with people, not romantic, just friends or family, where they're very happy for me to take the lead and for me to make the decisions. But then the second that I don't make the decision that they want and I explain to them why I made that decision and why that's the plan that I'm going with, then they throw that in my face. It hurts my feelings. It really hurts my feelings because I think at the core of it is that people don't always truly see me or my intentions. And I think also they assume that I don't have enough self esteem to know who I am, what I stand for, and what I believe I deserve. I can have a lot of flaws if we want to call them that. I can have a lot of things where I'm still developing on as a person, but there's just certain things that I'm uncompromising about. And unless I'm presented with new and undeniable evidence that gets me to reconsider my stance on something, there's just certain things that I'm not willing to change my mind on. I'm not willing to go with somebody's flow if their flow ain't steady, if it's not reliable. It's just not. If it's not, yeah, no, it's just not. That stuff doesn't work for me. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But again, it does hurt my feelings. And I'm embarrassed to admit that because people will say, well, fuck them people. You shouldn't care what they think. Well, I'm happy that that's your journey and that that's how you feel. But that's not how I feel. I do care about what people think sometimes. I still, when I say people, I mean people that I care about, people whose opinion I value. I still care. I've gotten a lot better at rebuking certain things, but I can acknowledge that my feelings still feel hurt sometimes. So just wanted to put that out there. All right. Eighth thing that I'm embarrassed to admit, but I'm willing to share openly, is that I don't know where I'll end up. Um, I just know what I want my life to feel like. I know that in a month, my life is going to look very different because this apartment is going to be full of boxes and everything packed up in a month. I only have 5 more weekends left here in El Paso. In a month, all of this is going to be packed away, uh, ready for the move. And I know I'm moving to my house in Odessa with the intention of selling it next year. But truthfully, I don't know where I'll end up after that. I don't have any concrete plans. I know I have said that I want to leave Texas. I still feel very strongly about that I want to leave Texas. I just don't know if and when that'll happen. And if I leave Texas, where will I go next? Um, where will I be able to find remote employment that aligns with my values and that will pay me well enough to be able to live? And what kind of life do I want to live? I will say this because I sat with this thought and just hear me out. For many years, this was my life. Wake up early, drive to a building, work in that building all day, drive straight home into that building, eat something, work late, go to sleep, and next day rinse and repeat. Please help me understand why that's no different than being in prison. Like if you live in a concrete building with doors, door after door after door after door, and several levels with tiny windows. And then you go work somewhere else to make somebody else money, really, because that's what it comes down to. And then you come home to this little box of concrete and you're preparing for the next day. And then you're spending your weekends recovering from. Help me understand how that's not like a prison. We would like to think we have this illusion of what freedom is, right? But to me, that's prison. And I did not know that until I was out of it. Like, I can recognize that there's some privilege in me being able to say that. I can recognize that. But this idea of freedom that we have really is not always freedom. Like, me going to work in a building for somebody else to look good or to the benefit of somebody else. Listen, I'm a very passionate educator 20 years later. But at the end of the day, my work was always making somebody else look good. There was a purpose. I was serving students, I was serving their families. But ultimately, my work made somebody else look good. Somebody else always took credit for the work that I did. Do I need credit? No. But I was running to the ground to make somebody else look good. Whether it was the school ratings or me contributing to the state testing scores that make the school and the district look good with the state, with the state government, it was always for somebody else. I knew that my principals and assistant principals' bonuses were tied with how I did. And so they were very motivated in getting me to perform at a certain level. It was always about somebody else. And when I understood that recently, I was like, I live in an apartment right now. I'm very lucky that I have housing right now. I'm very lucky that I'm getting to go back to my house. But once I sell my house, I don't know if I can go back to what I used to have. Like, I just don't think I want that. I don't want to be surrounded by concrete. I don't want that for myself. I I know that I don't want to be leaving this concrete box to go work in a concrete box and then come back home and rinse and repeat. I don't want that for myself. I know that much. I know that my parents made a lot of sacrifices being here in the United States, me being first generation. And I should be able, I have already broken barriers. I have already done that. But I think that a barrier that I want to break is living a different reality that has never been lived before in my family. I think I already do live that, but even more so for my nieces and my nephews to see that I have a different life and that it is possible. You know, I had the privilege of being able to babysit my nephews in the month of July. And one of my nephews told me all of his dreams and his hopes for when he grows up. We were talking about tiny homes, and it kind of goes with this, right? He told me, Tia Laura, do you think one day we could build something together? And like we could like live here, you can live here and I can live over here, and then there's a basketball court here, and like, and we were just talking about it. And I was telling him, I said, you know what, sweetie, like you can literally have anything you want. Your parents have worked so hard for you to have anything that you want and for you to be able to dream whatever you want. But you have to be willing to work for it. It's not going to just be given to you. Um you if you want to build a home in a piece of land where all of us live together and you have your own space and you have your own cave, if that's what you want, you can have that. You just got to be willing to work for it. And I think like he understood that. Like I'm not going to tell you you can't have what you want. What your heart desires, you can have that. You just got to be willing to work for it and understand that it's not going to be straightforward and it's not going to be easy. I'm sorry. It's just not. And with my youngest nephew, one of the affirmations that I told him, just kind of as a sidebar, I taught him to know me is to love me. I taught him to say that. Just for him to know that no matter where he goes, that people who get to know him will love him because it's the truth. I do believe that. Like when people truly get to know you and get beyond what other people's perceptions are and really give you a chance, they do get to love you and appreciate you for who you are. But when I think about my future and where I'm gonna be at, I don't know yet. I don't know what it's gonna look like. It's not that I don't have a vision or that I don't have hope. It's just that right now, truthfully, I'm embarrassed to admit that I'm in survival mode. And when I'm in survival mode, it's difficult for me to really envision a future. I did share this with a few people recently that I have really reconsidered what I want and made shifts in my life for that. And one of the things that I thought about is how, like, going back to that conversation with my nephew, because he was so interested in this idea of tiny homes, and we sat and watched videos on YouTube on how to build a tiny home, and he was so fascinated by that, right? But I was telling him, like, yeah, I would like to have a tiny home on a small piece of land. And outside of that tiny home, like I would have my own like pottery studio, like a shed with air conditioning and my kiln. I have my pottery studio out there. And then on my land, I would grow things like bell peppers, squash, strawberries, and I would have my own little greenhouse with my plants. And my baby dog, and I don't know if Sushi will be with me when if this ever happens, but my baby dog will be able to run outside, and we'll have like a little porch where I can sit outside sometimes and just look at open air, look at open land, and not be surrounded by all this concrete. And I could have one of those little like lawnmowers that you get on and ride around the property to make sure that all the land is cleared. And to get to me, you're gonna have to drive down a windy path. I'm not gonna be off of just a random street and intersection around a lot of concrete. And I told him, I was like, yeah, maybe one day I'll have that and you can come visit me and we can paint some pottery together. Um, I don't know if I'll be able to make that happen. I think I can make that happen. I just haven't figured out where it's gonna be yet. I still want to have access to be able to travel, to listen to live music, to watch live sporting events, to go to museums and eat delicious food. I still want to have access to that, but I don't know if I want to live in all of that. I don't think it's good for my nervous system. I really don't. Um, and so, yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't know where I'm going to end up yet because I'm living in survival mode right now, but that doesn't mean that I haven't stopped dreaming about it. So, thank you for hearing me out. I'm gonna try to post this as soon as possible. I should hopefully be able to post a new episode in 2 weeks. I welcome any questions or comments. I'm curious if anybody is comfortable in the comments sharing something that you're embarrassed to admit or afraid to admit out loud. Um, because I feel that the more that we have these types of conversations, the more we're able to not necessarily get over those fears, but learn to live with those fears a little bit more comfortably. Meaning, like Susan David, she's a psychologist, if I'm not mistaken. She said, uh, there's no such thing as really being fearless. It's more of like fear is courage walking. Like you can still be walking with fear, but you're letting your courage lead you forward. And that's what it is. And so this was just my way of letting that courage lead me forward, even if I'm afraid or embarrassed to admit certain things. So thank you for hearing me out.